Thanks. Good morning, everyone. So we are the last panel, and we'll try to make it interesting and exciting, and talk a bit about some technology issues, cyber issues, global issues, and what people are seeing out there. And we have a terrific panel to do that. With us on the panel, and I'll just go from my left straight down, is Dave Evans, and Dave is the Director of Strategic Alliances for Dell SecureWorks, and I'm sure all of you know Dell, and you may know Dave, and has been in the security business for more than 20 years. To Dave's left is Andrea Hoy, and Andrea is the founder of A. Hoy and Associates, which is a virtual CISO organization and worked with companies on security issues, has had leadership roles at McDonnell Douglas, Rockwell, Boeing, and other companies. Next is Joe Loomis, and Joe is the CEO of CyberSponse and has been involved in sales and startups for many years, has a double E degree and a business management degree, has been involved in cyber. And at the end, last and not least, is Tom Ottoman, and Tom is the CEO and co-founder of Lemonfish, which is a data risk analytics and insider threat and cyber intelligence company. Tom has spent a fair amount of time within the U.S. government as a technical director at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the Office of National Counterintelligence Executive, and then spent about 20 years in the Navy, including as a Navy SEAL. So we have a terrific panel to discuss what we think are deep issues within cyber, and we'll just get started. If someone's doing slides, you can advance to the next slide. If you're not, it's okay. All right, the way we're going to do this is ask everyone a similar kind of question and get different cuts. So we'll start, Dave, with you. What are you guys seeing out there? What's new to you? You're all having different cuts of this, either from whatever perspective you want, the way that companies are viewing this, the C-suite's viewing it, who the threat actors are, what the threat targets, those kinds of things. What's really new?
Sure. So from our perspective, we do a lot of incident response and forensics. So we're seeing a lot of smaller, mid-sized companies that are targets. The adversaries are seeing them as a softer, easier access. Sometimes this is leading to aggregation where you're going through to a larger target or some other manufacturer. But really one of the things that's a common thread is education. What we're finding is technology and tools are great, but without the end user education so they know exactly, don't click, don't do this, don't share this information. Because I think one of the things we saw during this conference is we've got 20 or 30% of breaches are caused by humans. They're not caused by technology. The adversaries do use malware, and that is a good option. But we do see that the education piece is becoming more and more prevalent across our board.
Yeah. Andrea, what's new for you?
I think would be the difference in the way ransomware is being used out there. And where it really affects, I think, all of you here is that the difference is that they're now starting to incorporate Tor into it, which means you could have an employee that's had his data held for ransom on your network and not be aware of it because they can turn around and now pay the ransom without you knowing because maybe they're afraid of losing their job. So again, what you were emphasizing in regards to education falls into play here, right? If you can get your HR department to make sure that they're not alienating and scaring the employees to do the right thing, but also because they're trying to do the right thing doesn't mean you're going to get in trouble if you report something's happened to you. So I think that's one of the big things I've seen that's new and trending. And they're using Tor to do it. So they're using our own technology.
Yes. Joe, what's new for you?
Who likes to fish? So fishing is going up even more now. We're starting to see, even I get fished all the time. And I think the more publicity you get, the bigger the target you are. really comes down to convenience, right? I mean, how do you actually train your organization based on the turnover, procurement, hire, fire type of culture, right? Everybody's growing, everybody's landing, expanding, everybody's contracting. And with that, there's an extraordinary amount of different turnover, even in cyber, right? Even just keeping people in an organization is problematic. So, we've had our CFO fished, and, our controls luckily caught that stuff, but you'd be surprised how many people just don't really catch it. I mean, I kid you not, I probably could fish most of you in here. I could send you a Dropbox link. I could probably send you something that looks like it's legitimate from your organization, or an Office 365 share, or a SharePoint invite, or something of the sort, and you're done. Right? And that's the problem, is that they really, really don't take for granted that the days of misspellings and, my uncle is a rich, sheik or whatever, that's all the things that have ever happened. They're getting much more sophisticated, and they're getting domesticated. So a lot of the fish and a lot of the types of, emails, we also heard about the other thing that I want to say, the second one is the vendor payment, requests. You get the accounting gets a bill from a procurement, department of some sort saying, hey, we've sent you X dollars of newspaper, or it could be copying paper. And it might be a negligible amount of money. It might be $500, it might be $300. To a large organization, that's something that doesn't require a lot of approval. And so we start to see that coming down, and where they just build this rapport, where if somebody's paid a low bill a relatively long time, maybe fraudulent, but they're familiar with it, and they've seen it before, and then the dollars go up because maybe the order went up, they're not going to think twice if something's suspicious. It's just human behavior, right? It's familiarity, it's convenience, and they're taking advantage of the naiveness. Mm-hmm. If you're not hyper paranoid anymore, it seems to me like you're more likely to be a victim. And what's unfortunate is that, how do you teach people to be paranoid, to be concerned? And there's some relative good tools out there. Like, I'm actually working with a young company called Fishbite, which is basically a relatively simple tool that can go out there, and I'm not even really a shareholder or anything of the sort. It's just that these guys came up with a way to just basically help the small and medium businesses run a campaign against your company and see how many people click on it.
All right. Thank you. Tom, what's new for you?
I think there's two things. First is that the companies need to understand where their data is within their own organization. I think I talked to quite a few. What's different about me coming out of the government knows particularly where their data is. It's generally marked, every paragraph is marked with some sort of classification on it. But moving into the commercial space, that doesn't happen. And when I talk to CSOs or CISOs that are out there, first question I ask them is, do you know where your data is? And most of the time they know where some of their regulated data is, but not necessarily the intellectual property that goes, it's almost as valuable or more valuable to the success of the company. So this brings me to the second thing, which I think is going on, is that data leakage and data breach isn't necessarily just a security issue anymore. It flows all the way up to the, up through the C-suite and all the way to the CEO level, and I think you're going to get more visibility, particularly with the damage that could be caused reputationally, brand value. Shareholders are more concerned about data breaches that are occurring. So I think you're going to get more interest from the CEO, particularly when these events continue to happen over and over again.
Okay, thanks. Good perspectives. I think a couple of things tie in there. Certainly we're certainly seeing the social engineering, and I want to drill down a little bit to this idea about has the target of choice changed over time? I mean, Tom, you were talking about certainly the intellectual property piece. The reputation piece, which has different actors. You can have whether it's just something that's just a breach or something that's a hacktivist that's really sort of about your values or your business or what you're doing, which I guess is sort of another cut on the target. But let's drill down really into the target. So just sort of step back a little bit, think about nation states, think about organized crime, think about hacktivists, think about insiders, employees. What assets have you seen shifts to which targets and assets are now are now what people are after? Or is it sort of the same you've been seeing over the last 5 years? Let's start on the other side and bring it back down. Tom?
Yeah, I think, obviously you have nation states going back. I mean, we'll just kind of pick on China for a little bit. They've got Project 863 that started back in 1986 that was specifically targeting technology, and they knew they had a large technology gap, and, I think it was their fifth 7th-year plan, or fifth 5-year plan, that they really outlined exactly how that they were going to catch up to the Western technologies, and it was really about theft. And so 863 turned into 973, and the progress continues. So I think companies that continue to work overseas and start joint ventures over there are going to continue to be at risk. I think you can probably modify or create some ways to separate yourself from the theft by just working on the technologies that they need over there. Maybe it's not the latest technology, but maybe it's 2nd gen, not 4th gen. I think that, as far as targets go, it's a target-rich environment, particularly in the deep web and the dark web, and a lot of things happen within that layer of the internet. So you see a lot of trading. Certain groups trade in credit card information. Groups trade in public health information for fraud purposes. And so I think that trend is going to continue. And what I've seen of lately, which I hadn't seen before, is actually the targeting of intellectual property, in a sense that they're phishing or looking for individuals that have key access within the company to be able to draw them out of that company and bring them into a new venture start. So I think that's a new trend that I'm seeing as far as targeting goes.
Thanks. Joe, how about you? Assets?
PHI obviously is going to have the biggest push, right? It's going to be the treasure trove of data. We all know this, right? You can generate a fraud claim from it. You can generate an identity. You can generate a bank account, a credit card, tax return. It's really the ideal. It's a multifaceted data set. I think that healthcare is probably the biggest sector that I'd be the scared the most about, given that it's typically organizations run by doctors that in this day and age really are hands-on type, not really technological types. And I think until that generation gap fills, where you've got the doctors that truly embrace technology and computers and networks and how communication is done and digital data now rather than paper data that we had previously. And I think that the weakest entry point is really, I see that people are trending towards still, is the sheer volume of free hotspots that people use today still. Right? I mean, nothing's for free. So again, an educational thing to all of the employees and all the partners is connecting to free Wi-Fi is really not free. I mean, you're really putting everything at risk, your personal data, your bank accounts, your corporate information, et cetera. And connecting to a VPN connectivity is really going to be your only alternative to that if you have to. Everybody's mobile device now has to have, has the option of doing a hotspot. I really recommend doing that from a targeted attack of what PHI data and corporate asset data is, because we all know how many people travel today, so everybody's using a hotspot whenever they're on the road. And that even airline Wi-Fi, if you do airline Wi-Fi, you still should be using some kind of encrypted proxy in between just to be safe.
Okay. Andrea, let's talk on your trends with crown jewels of interest to actors.
Oh, let's see. Well, okay, so we've talked about nation state, we've talked about non-nation state. I think we also have to include, though, now one of the more interesting recruitment techniques, which is with ISIS. They're turning around and they're taking 16-year-old boys that are maybe bored at home, but very capable, highly technical, and turning them into recruits and giving them a new allowance. And they only look at it as money. They're not looking at it as what they're really doing against their own country. They're looking at it far more just either monetary, or they're looking at it as, I'm making a change. And a lot of them, they feel they want to be a voice. And unfortunately, if we're not giving them the voice, they're going to get that voice from someplace else. The other thing I see is a lot of the big data issues that have come up. Many, many companies are now making it easier to identify where the most crown jewels are, right? Because they're putting big data in, they're putting servers in, and they're finding ways of specializing reports. So they're actually putting the tools in that the hackers can then take advantage of to use to get your crown jewels. So that's one other thing you might be looking at. Do people know where they're classifying the data, where the data sits? So if they had a hack and they look at a server, can they say for sure that this server had only this type of information, or only this much intellectual property, or only NPI? And I will guarantee probably, I would guess less than 40% of the companies out there, and I'm probably being very, very nice about that, really know where their data is on the servers. It's very hard to do data classification. And so I think some of the, it actually goes into your next point on the technology. Some of the newer technology that's using artificial intelligence to look at data servers and determine for you, instead of you having to go out to your business owners and saying, well, what do you think is important to you? Instead, it goes out there and says, okay, I see parallels. I see this is only accessed by C-level people in the organization. I see this is only accessed by HR. Why is it over here now? And I think those kind of reporting, those kind of artificial intelligence tools are going to better help us ensure the right thing in the future.
Okay. Dave? Crown jewels of interest.
Ditto.
What's happening?
So I think one thing that we've seen is obviously the adversaries go after where the money is. What's the easiest thing to monetize? And there's a characterization that we've put together that really, if you look at, like, say, a smaller, medium-sized business, the type of attack that they have is more of a drive-by attack. It's more of a mass approach using stock malware, nothing custom. Let's see how much money we can get out of them quickly. Maybe it's a crypto wall attack that somebody clicked on the wrong website and it cost them 2 Bitcoins to get their Excel file back. Or it's a point of sale breach at a retail. Those are easy, those are fast, those are using nothing that's that different. When you get into what we were talking about with nation states, they're looking for different assets. They're looking for, PII doesn't matter to them. Intellectual property does. Controls on their system that be able to impact a company with a business interruption. Things like that are what we see in more of the advanced attacks that are persistent, they're ubiquitous, they're very custom, they breach, they stay in the system for a long time, they wait for the right moment, and they execute from there. So, always we're back to where the money is, but I think that the motives are different depending on the company, and I think, and also, what their risk profile is.
So that sounds right. This is sort of interesting cuts, very different cuts on this. I mean, Tom, focusing on both the IPR, the intellectual property, the IPR, and what some of the insiders are doing. Joe on the individual PC and the healthcare data. Andrea, there's a very interesting one for me. Your formation of what the target of interest really is are individuals. And we don't always think of really the individuals as people who may be recruited by ISIS and other people as really sort of traditional assets. But I sort of like that idea. And Dave, thanks for breaking that up. When you're sort of breaking across these different actors and then what they're different, what they're interested in, I think there is an issue for certainly the insurance industry to think through, which traditionally has been writing against personally identifiable information and protected health information. But a lot of the things that you guys talked about as targets don't neatly fit within that. The intellectual property, Dave, your discussion about people targeting the actual operations of companies, critical infrastructure and otherwise. What do you guys think about as you sort of think about your day and a half or 2 days here and then your experience within the insurance industry about how it racks and stacks against what your target assets are, and just share some thoughts with people who are interested in insurance about that. Why don't we start this time with Andrea, and then Joe, and then Tom, and then we'll end up with Dave.
So actually, this is a question I've really wanted to ask the people in here that are insurance brokers, and that is like application security. A lot of times what I hear from IT as well, aren't we covered by our vendor management agreement? Aren't we covered, if we got breached, and it was through this application, aren't we covered by the vendor agreement? And I wonder how many of the insurance companies ask the question to the companies, how many third-party applications are you using? And of those third-party applications, how many of them are on a daily basis transmitting or processing your NPI, PII, or your sensitive information? Because some of the statistics that are out there are showing like 2/3 of applications are provided by a third party. They're no longer being built in-house. And then if you take into consideration the ghostware, the cloud data, 87% don't comply with application security standards that OWASP has provided, and 10% don't even meet the minimum standards that are out there. And yet everybody's hanging their hat on, well, but it's not our problem because the contract, doesn't that give us something by the contract? So I'm just curious from an insurance provider's perspective, are they false in their thinking on this?
So we will leave time for Q&A, and maybe someone can A that one. Okay. Joe?
Technology, what we're seeing is the idea of people thinking they can hire more people, right?
I start to see that people, there's this a notion that thinking that if we throw more bodies at the problem's going to get easier, right? And it just doesn't happen anymore. I think the prevention mindset also, it seems to be the hype that's out there, what technology works, which doesn't. Don't believe in all the marketing that you read. I think everybody tells you they can put a man on Jupiter and a woman on Mars or wherever it might be. And I think talk to references, right? You want to talk to real use cases that are using technology to understand where the line in the sand is of what's marketing and what's real. I think that what happens is people get caught up in the excitement of technology and the amazement of marketing and what it can do, and then they find out what it really can do after they use it, right? And I think that creates a huge stopgap between what's real and what's not. And I think what's the future is ultimately is automation, right? We're going to have to figure out. I mean, I was reading an article that the DoD just came out with. They have unlimited resources, unlimited budgets, and they're even moving towards automation now, trying to figure out a way to run security without human intervention. Whether it's the administrative functions as a stepping stone, as let's just start eliminating all the administrative side of cyber. The alerting, the tier 1 stuff, and let's leave the tier 2, tier 3 functions for the human level aspect. You're going to have to do that because as you mature as an organization, you're going to get more tools and you're going to have more alerts. So you're just compounding your own problem at the same time. So if you don't get automation, and I believe, just my prediction, 2016 keyword of the year will be automation.
Okay. Tom, do you want to pick up first on the insurance piece about, given all the different assets that you're talking about, what you take away from where the insurance industry is now, and then we'll circle back and do the technology.
Okay, I think there's some great opportunities for insurance to look forward at data leakage and data breach. I think there's some tools that are out there right now that really, the actuaries use to look at past events to kind of forecast what's going on or what's going to happen in the future. I think where the technology, I'm leaping a little bit ahead here, is going to advance as to where you're looking at active breaches that are occurring or how much your actually exposure is, whether it is on the open web or the deep web or the dark web. So give you some measurement or quantification, qualification of what exactly the risk that insurance companies are going to have to absorb. So I think there's some great technologies that are out there, and I guess we'll talk about it here in a moment.
Okay. Dave, do you want anything on the insurance industry, where they are, or do you want to?
I'll say one trend I've seen is moving from a breach panel type reactionary, what do you have in place, what relationships do you have, to a proactive stance of what can I do to get in front of this with a customer, especially a mid or large size one that has a lot of exposure, to review what they've got, make sure they have controls, and try to mentor them through this so that you have line of sight in the event they do have issues.
Okay. Let's move to the core technology piece. So the question I'm going to have for you guys is, okay, what's hype and what's not? Let me ask the audience. How many people here go to the RSA conference? Fair number. how many people, I guess, how many people get emails about, from vendors about new technologies weekly? I think it covers about everyone. So, you know, it's really kind of staggering, and I think it's great. I mean, we used to be in this area where people said one of the problems with cyber is there's a you know, companies don't want to protect themselves, that we're not really seeing companies take this seriously, that there's not a demand for security. And then you go to the RSA conference, or you just watch your mailbox for about a week. And on the RSA floor, there's, you know, have to be, you know, at least 450 vendors. 60 of them are new every year. And the venture capital money that is flowing into the security area is on a year-over-year basis going up more than 20%. And the innovation is intense. I think it's, my own view, one of the areas in IT where we're seeing about the most innovation. And then people have to sort through all of that innovation. And then people have to sort through those technologies. And so let me ask what you think. And you can talk about trends, and you can talk, or particular technologies, but sort of scale it for me on the, you know, what's hype for you and what's real for you, and how you think about it. Dave, why don't we start with you and just go straight down the line?
Sure. One of the trends, and I would say there's probably more half the people at RSA are there new every year, and then they change jobs and companies and come back again as a new company again. There's a lot of technology, there's a lot of solutions that are being pushed out. Intrusion prevention, next generation firewalls, application awareness, data loss prevention. We've had these things for a while. People are trying to package these and simplify these, because one thing that we've seen is across the end customer, the level of security experts is very finite, and there's a shortage. So you can deploy all the technology you want, but without the people to properly maintain it, all you're doing is just sinking capital, and you're really not changing your security posture. One of the trends that I've seen recently, which I very much am in favor of, is visibility down to the endpoint, down to the computer, down to the server. So they know that as soon as somebody clicks on that link and all of a sudden a crypto attack starts, they know very quickly. Antivirus is dead, but being able to see what's happening in your environment and how the adversary is moving, one will alert you to a breach faster. One of the things I heard was there's 200 days between infection and detection. I've seen it be 2 years. So the quicker you have visibility into what the adversary is doing and having logging so you can see what's been going on, those are probably the two trends that I'm seeing reemerge. Logging's been around forever, but the visibility piece is really where it's new.
Let me just press on that. So we have visibility as one of your key trends, and on the other side we have crypto as a key trend.
Yeah.
And within the enterprise, you're sort of at cross purposes, it seems to me.
Yeah.
If you're going end-to-end crypto and you're blowing through firewalls and spam filters and intrusion detection, you got to really trust those endpoints, and it seems you lack a little bit of visibility. How do you see that play out within the enterprise?
I think actually the enterprise is where they have the best opportunity, because they have controls in place. So if they decide to deploy a software application like Carbon Black or Bit9 that gives them that visibility and the controls to shut things down as necessary, then they have the tight desktop control where they can roll that out. Where I see it lacking is when you get to a smaller or mid-sized company that doesn't have those levels of controls or support, where people are bringing their own computers, people are, you know, taking them home, accessing sites they shouldn't. That's not quite the good hygiene. So I think actually in the enterprise they have a better visibility.
Yeah, and so let's continue. Andrea, your trends, what's hype, what's not. You can throw in crypto if you want, just it's a personal passion. But you don't have to. Okay.
Well, I do think you brought up a good point in regards to the death of antivirus. I mean, it's just not enough anymore. And we tend to use a lot of alphabet soup in our industry. So when he was mentioning IDS, we're talking about intrusion detection systems, intrusion prevention systems. Those are the systems that basically are all the time, similar to like what Joe was saying in regards to automated tools. It's an automated tool that looks at your system constantly and is seeing what traffic's going back and forth, both internally and externally, to identify anything that looks out of the ordinary or anything that may have code that's malicious in it. So let's say somebody did click on a phishing attack, which we all know these days, because they're getting better, it's very easy to click on it by accident and not intentionally. And these kind of barriers in there, these kind of technologies being added, basically give you what we call defense in depth. It allows you to capture and at least have knowledge of something that might be within your system. The other thing that I think is really viable these days is MDM, or mobile device management. I think everybody now, maybe 2-3 years ago, didn't really understand how large the smartphone, tablet, third-party smaller devices were going to take a trend into the business and into the companies, and also that people would want to use their own, not necessarily the company's device. And this was very, very hard from a security perspective to manage. So I think the mobile device management tools are something that's really trending out there and almost mandatory at this point. Either that or the BYOD, bring your own device type of policies that cover this. Again, policies, processes. The other thing I think that is really coming into play, I believe within the last 2 years when we did a survey of all our information security people at ISSA, we found that over 89% were actually seeing that their companies were putting money into security education again, because they're realizing that people are really the common factor that can negate entry into their environment, because they can spend all the money they want on all the tools, they can check all the boxes that they have a firewall, but at the end of the day, if the end user is allowing their college student to come home, then using the network, and you're still connected to the VPN while he's getting his stuff from the university, game over. So.
All right, thanks. Joe, you've already done a bit about technology, but you want to give us a quick, what's hype, what's not?
Another thing that I was talking about, to talk a little bit about what was previously stated about training, right? I mean, what we're starting to see too is you have so much turnover in security with people getting better job offers everywhere else. And maybe a SEAL here can, Tom, our former SEAL guy, can speak to this, but imagine if you had a SEAL team that every 2 months a new team member came into that team and then didn't even have time to gel with that team, right? And you look at a cybersecurity team as an operational team, right? A team that each of them know their own disciplines. They all know who does well best. They can predict each other. They can finish each other's sentences. They've worked so long together. But in our industry, we start to see that this isn't the case. This isn't reality, right? You got guys going and gals going in and out. It's like a revolving door. And then unfortunately, the organization suffers from that. So I believe if you invest in your employees properly, like proper training programs, like like we were talking just about, is the fact that we're working with a large bank, and there's really, you'd be amazed at how people really get excited. I mean, everything about retaining employees is about culture, let's be completely honest, especially in cyber. If you can keep them excited and interested, you're going to keep them around. It isn't always just about the capital. Sometimes they're moving on just because they're tired of the bureaucracy and really repetitive work. If you bring in some rather experts like guys from Dell or any other organizations out there and say, hey, let's run a real training scenario. Let's literally launch an APT, and we'll control it, and we'll see, in a controlled environment, and let's see what your organization and your guys can do, even in a mock scenario. They're going to get really excited about that. It's kind of like playing paintball, right? You never could be a SEAL, but you go to paintball, of course, and you wind up pretending to be SEALs or playing Call of Duty. If you can start to learn to embrace your team like that, you're going to lower your risk even substantially more by retaining talent that can gel together, and then that can start finishing each other's sentences.
That's good. That's good. People are technologies. Tom?
I never play paintball with my kids. They would kill me these days. So I think technology is amazing. I think I've got 2 college students, and they're both in 4-year degrees. And I think the stuff that they learned in the first 2 years could probably be thrown away. So I'm only willing to pay for a 2-year college stint. Now it's rolling out. It's amazing how fast things are growing. But I think the technology is really going to focus on 2 parts, and that is the prevention side and the detection side. On the prevention side, I talked a little bit about companies not knowing where their content or their data is, and I think there's some amazing tools that are coming out there that can actually help companies locate their information, whether it's natural language processing or latent semantic indexing. And then how do you actually show the information to the client itself? So do you take an approach much like a Palantir that's built on a SQL graph, kind of an Oracle backbone with really complex joins, or do you go with something more cutting edge that is more of a NoSQL approach to look at data? So I think those two things, as far as the tools go, by finding the data, I think is going to be a critical leap forward for most companies. Because once you identify and use these tools to identify where your data is, how much better is the rest of your enterprise? Because now you're able to maybe look at identity access management. So rather than 10 people having access to the data, maybe only 5 people need to have access to the data. Or maybe instead of having the data spilled out across multiple servers, you kind of collapse that. Because I think companies right now, because they don't know where their information is, they have to spread their security budget across the entire enterprise equally. So I think there's opportunities to maybe layer even deeper. Then again, of course, once you know where your data is, that's an opportunity to encrypt it. It's an opportunity to watermark it. It's an opportunity to inform your SIM tool. Many companies will use a Splunk or Logarithm or HP ArcSight, and they're all amazing tools in their own right. But what I hear and what I see is that there's so much data that comes back at the security officer. It's just a pile of information. And how do you discern which blip on the radar is the one that you care about? And then if you continue down the stack, you're looking at data loss prevention and even endpoint solution. So there's some amazing tools that are out there. I'll throw out A10 for an example, where you can actually park the data off to the side. Before it actually goes out of your organization, can you park it to the side and decide right there and then within a millisecond, much the way you do credit card purchases. They decide whether we're going to let you purchase this or not. Make that decision on whether you're going to let that information go outside of your organization. So, and if you do decide to let it go outside your organization, is that the opportunity to then put lines of code on that particular file to say, listen, when you get to where you're going, I want you to call back and tell me where you're at. And then the second line of code is, if you're not supposed to be there, and if I tell you to, I want you to delete yourself. So very, very great opportunities in technology for the prevention side. On the detection side, I think we're also going to see some great advancements out there. So once you learn the contents and kind of what the language of an organization is, then you can start following the content of the information, not necessarily the file, if that makes sense to you. It's mostly like if somebody puts a header or footer on a document and it's proprietary or confidential and it's associated with a particular file. What happens when somebody takes 1 or 2 paragraphs out of that document and they post it to an email? You've lost total control of your data. You don't know exactly where your data is, and I think that's where there's some leaps to be made on the prevention side, on the detection side. I think the regulators were the conversation that we had right before this one. And I think it's going to be a much easier conversation to have with the regulators when you're using technology to actually look for data that is leaked or breached, not at day 200 or when the FBI comes and knocks on your door, but when you tell them, it's like, listen, I've identified this. I've looked at the problem. I'm fully cooperating with you. I think the regulators, I think TT was up here talking about it, those are the ones, if you don't do that and it's actually, a vendor or the FBI come into your door, I think you have a greater risk of fines and sanctions happening versus you being proactive about finding the information.
Thanks. Let's pull on this thread about on the prevention side. Tom shared with us this nice visual of before data leaves the enterprise, you swipe your credit card and say you're okay or not okay to leave, and maybe we'll ask you to call home. We're all moving to cloud, and we're moving to cloud for lots of good reasons, right? We're moving to cloud because of technology, and we're moving to cloud because of economics. I mean, we're driving the price of storage to almost zero. and we're driving virtualization to an extreme that people probably hadn't thought of 10 years ago. So we're moving to cloud for wonderful sets of economic reasons. What does it mean for security? We all have these discussions, we all have these debates about what should you put in the cloud, what shouldn't you put in the cloud, should you put crown jewels in the cloud, is that okay, not okay, which kinds of data should you put there? Is your risk greater, or is it really a lot less? And it's something that everyone is working through. So, Dave, what do you say?
The risk is greater. Thank you. No, the cloud we've been moving this direction for years. Everybody asks, what is a cloud? Is it virtualization? Is it private? Is it public? Is it hybrid? If I have a disaster, a DR site, and I'm moving some assets or some production systems over there during the day, is it okay? I think really you have to look at it, and it goes back to a point Andrea made, that you need to look at where your crown jewels are, where is your data, where's the important assets of your company, and what controls do you have around that? And then what are you doing to make sure that the people that have the ability to move it to the cloud are authorized? You know, I think we're going to see some hijackings. I think we're going to see some companies, you know, in 2016 or 2017 that, you know, it's not going to be a crypto attack. It's going to be, we've stolen your servers. And they're no longer in the data center you thought they were. They're now in Germany. Go try to find them and go try to make a claim against your policy. So I think really it's you have to basically look at your assets and make a business decision in terms of what risk and exposure you want to have with cloud. But it's there. You've got to do it.
Andrea?
So it's interesting. You know, I go to meetings similar to this, but with a lot of information security officers, and there's still quite a few that do not want to embrace the cloud. I mean, all they do is they just put their hands up like this, and you can see the little hairs on the back of their neck going up as you say the word cloud. And yet, if you think about it, we've had things technically in the cloud as long as we've had the internet, practically. If you look at some of the old email systems, right? The old email systems, nobody was really serving up the email from their own shop. It was from either AOL or what was the one before that, Prodigy or something like that. And so it's technically, it's been around for a long time. It's just that the amount of data and what we're putting in it is much different than before. And how do you track what's going out your door to these sites? That's really what's, I think, probably more important. And then how do you ensure that, right? How do you know, do you have rules of engagement that say you can only send something that's encrypted? Do you say that only this type of information can go to this bucket? A lot of the companies that are very, very, very into Salesforce will tell you that's their crown jewels. If they were to lose their Salesforce database, game over for them. Their whole company would decline. I mean, that's everything for them. And yet that is a cloud-based solution. So, and not only that, it's a cloud-based solution that comes with the ability to attach it to Gmail accounts, Yahoo accounts, non-company accounts and standards. It allows you to, most people don't know, but by default, you're able to take data out of there, copy it onto whatever hard drive the privileged user, the user that's been authenticated to the system can take the data off. So it's up to you to put the restraints on it, but if you don't know there's restraints that you need to put on it, again, game over. Another trend I'm seeing from a cloud perspective is a lot of trending is going to, is there a way of securing the cloud per se? Is there a way of making a encrypted cloud? And I'm seeing a lot of the companies are making available encrypted clouds now. I mean, it's almost common that they'll ask you, do you want your data to be encrypted or not encrypted? So that's becoming a solution in of itself. The other trend I'm seeing, which is brand new, and I don't know if it's going to take flight or not, is moving data to Switzerland, where it's a safe haven. So if there is a court injunction or action that says, okay, I want that data, can they get it? Because by Swiss law, if there's financial data in it, they're not allowed to provide it to any other entity. So it's against their law to provide it. So it's going to be interesting to see how what the future holds in that capacity.
Okay, and why don't we want to leave some time for questions. We have 10 minutes left, so why don't we very quickly, sorry guys, do cloud. And then we'll take some questions, and then we'll wrap it up with a couple of other short, maybe there'll be rapid fire questions. Okay, Joe,
Real quick on cloud. So in my perspective, cloud is definitely a move towards the right direction. It's just understand who the cloud is from your perspective, right? And what vendor are you using? What controls are in place? How are they managing their data? Where are they located? How are they managing their data? Your data. What controls do they have in place? Because really, what you're doing is you're outsourcing your data store, and who's managing, protecting that data. It's kind of like your next generation MSSP, so to speak. You could obviously go to the cloud providers that provide none of that for you. Don't recommend that because it's only going to add more work to yourself and liability. So I think from a cloud perspective, it's really an intimate relationship you're going to have with that organization. Really do that detailed, reference checks again, validation, trust and validate. If you think of that way, you guys are insurance guys and lawyers, you know that.
yeah. Tom?
I think just quickly, I think data is vulnerable wherever you put it. There are vulnerabilities whether you have your data on-prem or whether you use a off-site capability or even in the cloud. And we had this discussion. It was a long, hard-fought discussion within the DNI and several of the agencies on, do we adopt this cloud perspective? I think there's ways to increase your security, whether you encrypt it at rest or encrypt it in motion, or what are the protocols you put in place around access to the data. So I'm not a fan of the cloud, but I'm not necessarily against the cloud either. I just think that you need to be aware of the vulnerabilities on whichever decision you make.
Okay, fair enough. Questions? You got it, great panelists. There's one.
I'll ask one, but I'll answer Ms. Hoy's question first. So the interleaving of the value chain in most firms is creating a contractual mess. And so insurance is really the only solution because you're coming in over top of it. But it's a very complicated subject. And the cloud is just another extension of that. It's a very complicated value chain that's being used. My question, you guys haven't talked about it, but we saw a little bit of it in the afternoon, which is these industrial systems. So we have a growing use of industrial control systems and vulnerabilities going all the way from the insulin pump all the way to your car, right? So can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I'll just open it up. First person first. Probably everyone has something to say about this.
I can talk a little bit. So vulnerability management is probably one of the most difficult things to handle or get your arms wrapped around, given that how addicted we are to convenience. Right? I mean, for every convenience we create a risk, and I think we ignored that for the first part of the first decade of the internet. And then with vulnerability management, you start to realize that it's a waterfall of let's just say a leaking dam, right? It never ever goes away. It's always cracking. It's always pouring out water, and where you plug one, another one opens up. It's kind of the whack-a-mole perspective. And really, the only way you're going to be able to manage that is how fast you adopt new technology, and as well as how fast you adopt new products that can be vulnerable. You kind of have to slow down your perspective to adoption towards addicted personality of convenience, right? If your customers are demanding convenience, sometimes it's an educational conversation to explain that understanding that convenience comes with these risks, right? Whether it's passwords, whether it's patching, whether it's vulnerabilities in code like automobiles that we're seeing today. Everybody wants a connected car. Everybody wants internet in their car, right? Everybody wants their car to tell them everything that they want and feel and think, right? But every time that you're relying on vendors and technology that is pushing the envelope, exploits aren't even been thought of yet, while you have technology that you can't prevent what you don't know. And if you put 20 lines of code together that is new code, it's never been coded that way, you have no way of determining if that code actually is vulnerable or not. You could follow best practices, but you still can come up with innovative ways around it. Even this chip and pin stuff that the credit card brands are doing out with, the best motivation to any hacker is tell them they can't do something, right?
All right. True. Anyone else? Industrial control systems? No one else. Okay. I'll try from a different just a different angle, because it is something, and I mean, you could call it Internet of Things, but let me shift your question a little bit to the industrial internet. If you look at places like Germany, which has a very specific plan about building out their manufacturing base through what they call the industrial internet and industrial controls and stuff. Thoughts around industrial internet? GE is huge in industrial internet, obviously, and companies like my old firm, Cisco.
Okay, yes, you're staring at me. So
I am.
I have to say something. So, when it comes to industrial controls, I think we've moved over the last 20 years from a legacy infrastructure that was 50 to 70 years old, using technology that was not built to be enabled on the internet, to now the new SCADA systems that are all IP-based. You've got home meters that all have IP-based. That's why we had to move to IPv6. We ran out of addresses. When it comes to the industrial piece, though, security has been a growing concern, is how they're building it out. And I think they are taking a more meticulous approach to it than if we look at versus the Internet of Things. And I'll compare and contrast that. If you're building an industrial system that you're just going to go into a multi-billion-dollar company, you're going to make sure that you've got controls in place, you've got the coded right, you've spent the time, effort, and R&D to bring it to a level that you feel some comfort about, because you are going to be liable for what happens. If you look at the Internet of Things, hey, I've got a refrigerator that's going to tell me whether or not the ice maker is working or not. All right, time to market is very fast. The expenses you're going to put into R&D are very minimal. So you're not going to have the best code. You're not going to have the best. Controls, and more than likely, you're not going to be able to patch it. Some of the things we've seen with like nanny cams or webcams that cost $20 or $30. These are not sophisticated pieces of equipment. They came to market very quickly. They're plugged in. You can get to it from your phone, but there's no way to update it. So you're going to see this wave of early to market for Internet of Things that are going to be very vulnerable. Then we're going to see a backlash, and we'll probably see things slow down a bit as we re-engineer and retool. I think the controls, like SCADA and all the rest of them, are going to be a little more purposeful in terms of being built and supported.
Okay. We'll take one more question if there is one. We've got 5 minutes left. Otherwise, we'll continue on our merry way. So let's talk a little bit about what people have been talking about for the last couple of days. This conversation that goes on between the CISO or the CIO or the CFO and the C-suite and the board about cyber. And we only have a couple of minutes, so I guess I want, if you could boil this down. What do you have to share about what that conversation has to look like in order to move the needle for the board? And Tom, we'll start with you and just boil it down.
I think, if I'm the CEO of the company now, I'm looking at regulations and fines and sanctions, and potentially even criminal implications for me. So I'm going to be very concerned about what's going on and how much leakage of data is out there, because it's going to eventually flow back to me, and it certainly affects the overall health and well-being of the company. So I think if I'm looking at the future, companies are going to want to understand in the event of a breach, where I think the new standard will be, or how do you, when, as the CEO, how do I measure the effectiveness of my security? It's not if a breach happens, but what did you have in place, or what preventive measures are you ready to go with when it does occur? So rather than what I would want to know is certainly when the leak actually happened, when did we find out about it, when did the forensic team get involved, when did we talk to the regulators, when did the cease and desist go out, when did it get pulled down from wherever it was located. I think you're probably going to want to do some policy, or whatever was the cause of it, you're going to want to trace it back and try to figure out, what processes or policies can we put in place to change the behaviors to to not allow that to happen again, but I think those would be my comments on that.
Okay, we got 2 minutes, so let's have a 15-second round.
First, two things that I would say is divide and conquer. Find the most technical, sophisticated board member, start there, right? You gotta know your audience before you communicate anything. And I think what happens is C-levels or, or directors of engineering, auditors, et cetera, will go in and talk all this highly technical stuff, and they're talking to an audience that doesn't even understand that. If you really understand the competency level of your audience, you're gonna be way more effective, and then you can start maturing that. You really need to get intimate with the people that you're gonna ask for approval and authority from, and especially on financing. And then ultimately find that one champion that is the most tech savvy out of them all, that can understand it, embrace it, and kind of, get to know them really well. You're going to have to build a really, really good rapport with that one board member that can help translate your message when the door closes and you leave and they start roundtabling what they're going to do.
Okay.
That's really what you're going to have to do.
Thanks. Andrea, 15 seconds.
Okay, I'm just going to share some statistics that I found were really interesting when Adam provided this question. I found a study was done by PwC in regards to, we had basically the year 2014 was the year of the breach. And it was like, who's responsible for all the data breaches of 2014? And they went out and they surveyed all these corporate board of directors. And they basically found that the board of directors realized that they were really ones at fault for a lot of this because 30% had no discussion in the boardroom about cybersecurity. So this is something from insurers' perspective you guys could take away, because this is the one way they can change this about, is at least getting the insurance clauses in there for cybersecurity risk.
Okay, thanks. Dave?
The one thing I've seen talking to boards is they don't understand the true impact of a cyber attack. And when you can translate that into business continuity and business interruption, they look at an entirely different perspective.
Okay. All right. Last question, and there are only 2 ways to answer this question. Okay? There are 2 words, and you have to choose one of them. Looking out into the future and cyber, and where we're going in cyber, and for the future of the economy and the country and national security globally. Are you optimistic or pessimistic? Dave?
Optimistic.
Andrea?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Joe?
Pessimistic.
Tom?
I'm optimistic.
Thank you. Let me have a show of hands. Who in the audience is optimistic about the future? Okay. And pessimistic?
See, I'm in good company.
Sort of a
50-50.
split.
I know, exactly.
On that note, we're ending this, I thought, interesting panel. Thank you.
Appreciate it.